Good morning, and thank you for joining our live talk with STEM Ambassador Steph, who is an airline pilot. How exciting is that? To celebrate World Space Week, we're delighted to welcome Steph today, who will share her inspiring journey into aviation and STEM. Hear how curiosity, determination and creativity can open many paths to success, and how important it is to encourage more young women to pursue these fields. Feel free to post your questions in the chat, and Steph will answer as many as she can at the end of her talk. Now let's get started. Good morning, Steph.
Good morning and welcome. I am a senior first officer. I'm also a pilot coach and mentor, and I wanted to give you a presentation to tell you a little bit about my journey and about my job. So like all of you right now, I went to school. My aviation journey actually started around the age of 5, where I got the chance to have a look in the flight deck. At that time, it was during a flight, which was really good. I always had this goal, but I got a funny luck, like you want to fly a plane. So I worked really hard at school. In those days, it was GCSEs, so an A star is similar to a 9. I left school with 10 A stars to C, which is like a 9 to a 6. Not amazing grades, but they were good. I felt like the school didn't push me enough, so then I applied for a scholarship to a private school, and they sponsored me. I have a cold, sorry. And there I did some higher qualifications in art, maths, design, technology, and physics. I actually realised I wasn't as smart as what I thought, and my grades weren't great, but a D is still a pass. During this time, so I was living in a single parent family, and we were living in a council house, and my school told me that, you know, people like you don't go on to do a job as a pilot because it costs a lot of money. And actually what she should have said is, it costs a lot of money and it takes a lot of hard work, but you can achieve it. But I didn't realize that at the time, and I just did my best to do it anyway. The emphasis here is like really get good grades, because then you can go on to do whatever you want to do with it. I started flying gliders when I was about 14 years old at a gliding club, and I had £2 per week to spend on one winch launch. And then I started doing my private pilot license, and I went to university to do a degree in aviation technology because the pilot license was cheaper. Excuse me. It actually cost me a lot of money, and to pay back that degree has taken me a long time, until the age of about 36 or 37. And I wish that in hindsight I'd had a job in aviation and paid for my own pilot license. So after I left university, I decided that I really need my CV to stand out, and it needs to look amazing, because I'm competing with people who can afford to go to the best flight school, and I don't have that option available to me. So I went on to train in aerobatics, and I did an aerobatics competition. And to get some experience in the industry, I worked as cabin crew for Thomas Cook. Had an absolutely great time. I loved it. I was shortlisted for the Cathay Pacific sponsored pilot scheme to the final 4 out of 30,000. I didn't get it, and excuse me, I have to have a sweet for my throat. I was shortlisted to the final 4, but I didn't get it. My flight instructor told me, you just have to keep going and keep flying. So I was working at most of the time 3 jobs back to back, sometimes 2 jobs, and eventually got quite a good job as a transplant night operations coordinator. And from there I got a job with West Atlantic on the cadet scheme. So I worked for them, and in exchange they paid for my flight training, and eventually qualified with my air transport pilot license, which is a commercial pilot license, in 2016, having started gliding in 2002. So it took me about 14 years in total. These are the 2 aircraft that I've flown professionally. So on the right side is British Aerospace Jetstream 61, and you can see all of the little round dials, whereas on the other side is the Airbus 320 with the nice shiny flat glass screen and a lot more advanced equipment as well. Why do we have different aircraft? Well, it's based on the job that they do. So short range is better suited to a turboprop, and that's with a big propeller on the side. It typically flies lower, it burns a lot less fuel, but you sit in the weather and you have different problems to deal with. Whereas an Airbus is better suited to get into a really good climb altitude. So we're typically restricted to about 40,000 feet in aviation, because it's quite a good fuel burn for the engines. But also, if we have a problem and we need to get on oxygen, we have about 3 seconds to respond. Whereas if we go any higher than that, you need a half a second, and it's not possible to get on oxygen before you have a problem. So that 39,000 feet is like a really good balance between having a really good fuel efficiency, but also being able to respond and get on oxygen quickly if you have a problem. So this is a brand new Airbus A320neo that I was able to fly the 8th flight on, which is amazing. It smells exactly like a brand new aircraft. And normally these things that you see are black with soot and dust and engine fumes, but actually this one was immaculate and it was really lovely to fly. So currently Airbus and Solar Impulse Foundation are combining technological solutions to use satellite imagery to restore the ecosystems, eco-development and build climate resilience. What does that mean? It means they can, Airbus are looking at ways to preserve forests and to preserve glaciers. So they have Airbus Zero E project. It was launched in 2020, and it's looking at the feasibility of having hydrogen fuel cell technology. This is super important for going forward with carbon efficiency in aviation industry. And if it's something that you're interested in working in, it's better protecting the environment, and it's using a better engine solution that's more fuel efficient and that looks after our environment. So if it's something you're interested in working in, would really urge you to go into that field. This fuel cell technology, it basically transforms hydrogen into electricity through a chemical reaction, and the only byproduct of that reaction is water. And this is carbon neutral as long as the hydrogen is made using renewable technology. This is at the forefront of aviation right now. Each aircraft has 4 propeller engines for this new hydrogen technology. They each have 8 blades, so that's 8 massive propeller blades, and they're driven by their own fuel cell stack. At the moment, this is really difficult to work with because there's no commercially available hydrogen fuel cells that can power an aircraft and be light enough to fly. So there's a new collaboration going on at the minute, and they had a success in 2023 with producing enough power to be able to do this. What you see here is one of the fantastic views that we have with the cirrus clouds in the background. So when you see a contrail behind an aircraft, those cirrus clouds sometimes are created by us. There's a team that are looking at contrail avoidance, so how to avoid basically airplanes from making more clouds and to better protect the environment. So this is the ground and tower control at Amsterdam Airport in Schiphol. So they're not just tower control, but we have ground control, and they are looking at basically how we can change our routing and how we can change our flight level in order to not create more clouds, in order to better protect the environment. So clouds influence the Earth's equilibrium by altering the global cloudiness. So when we, especially at night, when there's what's called radiative forcing, and it's both incoming solar radiation, so it's the sun's rays coming into the Earth, and the outgoing thermal radiation from the ground being warmed and emitting that heat back, which is what's contributing to climate change, and especially at this high level where those cirrus clouds are. So that we need to make sure that there's an alternative solution, but we need to make sure that, for example, changing our routing or changing our flight level doesn't actually create more carbon than creating the contrail in the first place. So this is a big thing that's going on at the moment. This is why also pilots study the weather and why we study global warming and how we can affect that. The highlight here I just want to make is on the research and development over something like destruction of aircraft because you don't agree with climate change. So there is a lot of research going on at the moment. My experience, I've flown both cargo and passenger. Maybe some of you have never seen a cargo aircraft before. Excuse me. Cargo flights are basically essential to deliver fresh and non-fresh produce to countries, especially like tiny islands. Pet food, for example, coffee, chocolates, electronics parts for your phone, they can't be flown in bulk in a normal aircraft. Live animals for breeding, it reduces the stress when you fly them rather than go by road. Newspapers for the morning read, that's essential to get there quickly. Bank documents, bank statements, bank cards, things like this. Oh, sorry, skipped a little bit too far ahead. I have to, Lisa, I'm sorry, I skipped too far ahead there. I'm just going to go back. Sorry about that. Now you have a clue what's coming up. I really enjoyed both types of flying. I have to say, my previous experience working in air medical ops, so that's transplant organs, it's teams for transplant, it's medical patients. That was a completely different side as well. And often those really wealthy people who own their own aircraft can sometimes lease them to air med operation operators. So sometimes when you see what you think is a private jet, actually that could be used on an air med ops flight, and it could be saving somebody's life. So I had a situation where one morning the flights from Aberdeen Airport were cancelled, and it was because a baby's heart had been delivered and the baby survived. I knew that those people who missed their holiday flight would be pretty mad, and I knew they would never understand, but that was an essential life-saving flight that took place. So when I arrive at work, this is typically what it looks like. So this is both lines that I've worked for as a pilot professionally. On the top one is when we arrive in the night, the aircraft are being loaded or starting to be loaded. Engineering is sometimes around or sometimes not. We have our own iPad, which we update. We do all of the paperwork ourselves. We make sure we've read all the notices, check the flight plans, make sure the information's there. And then once we are on board the aircraft, so this is my seat on the right hand side, and typically where the aircraft's normally parked on stand. And then we meet as a team, so the pilots and the cabin crew together, we do a briefing, we talk about what we're going to do on the day, talk about if there's any problems with weather, if there's going to be any control restrictions from air traffic control. We talk to the ground staff, make sure that everything's working properly in the airport. So this is like a typical arrival at work for me. This is the private pilot's license flight training. Anyone can do this. If you want to be pilot, it doesn't matter what you do as a job. Anybody can get in an aircraft, go to a local flying school, and just pay to do it. The only way that I could afford to do this was work 3 jobs. I worked in a bar, I was lifeguarding, and in a restaurant. I was earning about £5.35 an hour, and I would just save up, and I would do 20 minutes every 3 weeks. And then when I had saved up enough money or saved up my tips, I would go and do a longer flight. So this is me with the flying instructor at the top. This is us, a group of us making a trip together, and we'd fly in a kind of formation and go and have breakfast or go camping. So it's a really fun thing to do, and anybody can do it. It doesn't matter what your background is, colour, sexuality, gender. There's absolutely no restriction. There's 7 written exams. You need to do 45 hours, and I recommend that you do the full private pilot's license, UK private pilot license, because you can always upgrade it. And even if you want to go to flight training school, that's never going to hold you back. That's always going to be an advantage, something that you have. How do we do our flight training? So once you've passed your private pilot license, you've done all the commercial exams, and you join an airline as a first officer, you need to do what's called a type rating. And it's much safer to do this inside a simulator than inside the aircraft. So the top right hand side picture is inside the simulator. That's what it looks like. It's super realistic. We have cars and people moving. We even have the little man waving a flag. The aircraft will move. Even when you taxi over the lights, you feel the little boom, boom. And the reason that moves is because of these hydraulic stilts that you can see on the right hand side there. So this is the 747 simulator on the right hand side, and inside the Airbus 320 simulator on the left there. Different types of flying that some of you might have never seen or never heard of before. So on the left there is helicopter cargo slinging. They have a line that's typically about 300 meters or up to 1,000 feet. And in this picture, they're moving rocks to prevent subsidence of the earth, and it's actually in the Peace District, and it stops the land moving, and it protects the environment, protects the forest, and protects the lakes. The bottom picture there is delivering cargo supplies to a ski resort, and it's the most cheapest and cost-effective way to get supplies there. And in the top there is the little thing that they use for firefighting. So the helicopter pilot will fly over the water, submerge this vessel. It will fill with about 1,000 kilograms of water, and it's constantly leaking, and then fly to the fire and put the fire out. But there's many different types of flying on there. So you've got lighthouse inspections, emergency service, emergency services, mountain rescue, animal welfare surveillance is flying over the north of Scotland and counting how many goats there are, making sure that a farmer knows exactly where their animals are. Different types of cargo that some of you might have never seen before. It includes animals and chemicals, bleach and paints, medical equipment. It can also include cars, bees. I've had crickets. We used to deliver pet food to the Channel Islands. There's a lot of different types of cargo, and they all come with their own restrictions. So, for example, you can't put a bay of live bees next to radioactive equipment, or you can't put animals next to food produce, or you there's different rules with lots of different things, and we get a book with the procedures for carrying those goods, and also for the emergency procedures if something was to happen. Why do I do this job? For basically these really cool views. Often a day will always include an aspect of day flying and night flying. It's the nature of the work, and it's good for the company that the aircraft is always flying. Some airports where there isn't a curfew, you basically decide if you want to start very early in the morning, so you want a 3 o'clock alarm, or if you want to get home after midnight. For me, I'm always a late person, and I don't enjoy the early so much, but some of my colleagues do, and then we can swap. So it's a really fun job for me that I always start late and finish late, and I prefer this. And we always see the best sunsets and sunrises. Thank you for your attention. Have you got any questions? And did anybody want to see any of the things that we normally bring? So I have here my pilot license with me. I have the high vis that I always take to work, and my headset here.
Thank you very much, Steph. That was a really, really interesting talk, and well done for doing that in such a short period of time when there's so much to say. But we have had some great questions in the chat. So let's have a look at them, starting with, how about what skills are most important to be a pilot?
This is a really good question. When I was in sixth form, my careers advisor gave me a booklet which said the top skills to become a pilot, and education, I think, was 7th on the list. I still have the booklet. The top things were teamwork, communication, able to be receptive to feedback, to have transferable skills. And I think there's quite a lot of things. For me personally, it was super important to have a range of things on my CV that could demonstrate different things. So just as an example, to show leadership, I couldn't get a job with a leadership position, but I could do volunteering, and I could get some experience with leadership in a volunteering position. And ultimately I ended up doing volunteering with, I think, 20 or 22 different organizations, just because I wanted to show as many skills as I could. So teamwork, leadership, communication, I think, are the top 3. Having a passion for wanting to do it, having a passion for just going and getting a job, earning some money and going to the airfield, whether it's snowing or raining or sunny or windy, and just getting in the aircraft and going, I think, is the thing that you really need to have most of all.
Yeah, that's really good to hear. Thank you very much. Another question we have here is, how has aviation changed since you started your career?
Oh, that's also a really good question. When when I started, we used to get a clipboard with a paper with a load sheet that you would have to manually do with a ruler and a pencil. And if you accidentally went the wrong way, you would mess up the whole. So basically the aircraft is a little bit like a seesaw, and you have to make sure that it's balanced in the middle. When you're doing that with paper, there's a lot of room for error. And it takes a lot of good checking or a lot of trust in the other person to do it. Whereas now we each have an iPad, and we each put that information into the iPad, and we double check it and cross check it. So I'd say in that respect, it's a lot safer. The way that the updates are done, so we used to have to sit and do the manual updates. Sometimes on a 4-hour flight, you would be constantly taking papers out and moving papers. And it would be a system of taking one and putting the old one here, and you had to do it very carefully to make sure you didn't miss any pages. Whereas now it's connecting the iPad to Wi-Fi and updating it. So it's, I would say it's become safer. I would say that the safety investigations and the information that's done widely in the worldwide industry is shared with all of the pilots, and actually there's a bigger emphasis on training rather than checking, or certainly in my experience. I feel like you really have the opportunity to go to the simulator and say, okay, I don't understand this. Can you explain it? Can you show me it? Can we demonstrate it? Can we try it? And there's a much bigger emphasis from the company that if you have an interest in it, we would love to explore that rather than telling you off for not knowing it.
No, that's good to know. Thank you very much. We have a question from Marshall in Year 7 from Sirius Academy North. What cargo plane did you fly?
It was called an ATP, and it stands for Advanced Turbo Propeller. We used to call it another technical problem because there was always things wrong. Or the real name is a Jetstream 61.
Thank you very much. And we have a question here which says, what age do you have to be, the minimum age, to be a pilot?
To fly glider on your own, you need to be 14 to solo, and to have your private pilot license, I think it's 16. I went solo in a glider before I could drive a car, but in powered aircraft, I think it's 16 or 17. I think the best thing is if you're really keen to get, I mean, when I was young, Google Maps didn't exist. We just had to look at a chart and figure out where the airfields were. You guys have Google Maps, which is a tremendous resource. Get on Google Maps, type in aerodrome rather than airfield. It'll bring up your little airfields, and you can drop them a note and say, can I come along? Can I have a look? How old do I have to be to join? How old do I have to be to do the lessons? As a dual, as a student, you can certainly fly with an instructor at your age. The biggest problem is a weight and balance issue, so you have to be heavy enough if you're flying an aircraft where there's one seat behind the other, for example. But if it's a side-by-side, like a Cessna 150, 152, PA-28, you can fly with an instructor at this age.
Well, thank you very much. Here's a question, Will. Were you nervous for your first flight?
The first time I went to the gliding club, so I saw it in the newspaper, and they said, we're looking for cadet pilots. And my mum said, you always say you want to be a pilot, let's go. And when we went there, they were selling T-shirts with the club logo on. And my mum said, I'll buy you a T-shirt. And I said, no, I might not join, I might not stay. And she was like, you're gonna join. And I did. I was a member for many, many years. And the first flight, the instructor asked me, do you have your seatbelt on properly on my shoulders? And I thought I was getting told off. And I said, like, yeah, of course, and just quickly put them there. But actually what he meant is your seatbelt really secure? Because I'm going to do a kind of aerobatic maneuver and you're going to have a lot of fun, but I don't want you to fall out of the seat. So I quickly put the seatbelt and said, yeah. And we did a dive and then quickly flew past the airfield, like past my mom. And then you come back up and do a little loop and then bring the speed back and get the aircraft under control and then land in a really safe manner. So it was a really fun aerobatic maneuver. And I just thought, oh my God, wow, I have to do this again. So no, I wasn't scared. I absolutely loved it.
No, thank you very much. A student is asking, do you fly through all weather conditions?
Great question. No, we don't. we get in the iPad, we get a flight plan. It's got our routing, it's got some settings that we're going to program into the aircraft, but also there's a page with notice to aircrew. We call them NOTAMs, notice to airmen, and also weather and significant weather. And it will show us really clearly on there where the weather is, where there might be storms, where a front might be passing through, where we can expect the wind to change. And if we see on there a storm, we'll have a look at it and usually take extra fuel so that we can avoid it. We will not fly through a thunderstorm, and if there's a line of thunderstorms and it's a very, very long line spanning hundreds of kilometers, it might be the case that we pick the part which is the safest to fly through with the least amount of storm activity. Or in some cases, I have also flown the entire length of the storm and gone up to the north over the top of Germany and come back down into land, because I'm based in Berlin. I'm in Germany right now. So we won't fly through a storm. We definitely won't fly close to a storm. It's too dangerous. And actually, as a young glider pilot, I did once get, unbeknownst to me, very close to bad weather. And my instructor got on the radio and said, "Steph, get on the ground immediately." And I felt like, okay, what have I done? And as I came down and closed the air brakes and shot straight back up into the air again, and then I realized I'm in an area with a really high suction rate, which is giving a lot of lift, and that is the sign that a storm is creating updrafts, and once it can get you in the middle, it can suck you up really high, and it can cause problems if you get so high you can't breathe anymore. And as I came down, the heavens just opened with hailstones, and that was probably my only experience of flying in bad weather, and that was on my own at about 17 years old. And it was a really big lesson of looking for the signs of a thunderstorm, listening to the on the radio, and seeing the dark cloud and seeing the high rate of climb. So as a young person on my own in a glider, I learned certainly a lot from that. And now as a professional pilot with a commercial airline, we do things in a much safer way. And there's a lot of discussion in the briefing and talking about the weather. But no, we won't fly through the centre of a thunderstorm. It's too dangerous.
Thank you. But the good news is you survived, which is great.
I did, and it was a very big lesson, but it does make me laugh that my scariest flight was on my own in a glider, and absolutely not in a commercial aircraft, which is how it should be.
Yeah. Well done to you. Here's a couple of questions all into one here. So
yeah.
we've got a few minutes left, and we've got quite a lot of questions.
Oh, sorry.
So roughly, how many hours a week do you usually fly? How do you cope with long hours, jet lag, or being away from home?
I'm always, I mean, what do you call home? Home is where my bed is, actually. To go and visit my mum, I have to take a flight, and it takes about 2 hours. Do I miss being in the north of England? No, I don't. I'm very happy here. I have great friends and a great life. If I'm in a hotel and away from what is now my home, that's also fine. It's nice being away. It's nice getting the metro into another city and trying a breakfast somewhere that I've never had before, or meeting with my colleagues and going for a lunch, especially for Milan, and we can go for a pizza or pasta. This is great. How many hours in a week? It varies. I would say up to 40, but you tend to do more flying in whatever the season is for the country that you live in. So in the UK, it's a summer season. We will do quite intensively a lot of flying back to back with sometimes maximum duty times and minimum hours. In the very peak part of summer, it can happen. And then in the winter, you might find that some of your shifts are normal flights and then a standby, and they might not call you on the standby, and then you finish the standby and you just are at home the whole time. They never called you, and then you go to work tomorrow. It's not a day off, because I'm at home and the phone's on, and I'm always super conscious and checking the phone every 10 minutes. Is it not on silent? Did I miss something? Do I have signal? So actually it's a day just usually to do cleaning and keep the phone on loud. I tend not to go anywhere, because if you drop a signal or you have a problem or run out of battery, it's too much, it's too stressful. But sometimes it's really nice to have a day just to sit at home and read books, really enjoy, or to catch up on the manuals or the notices, because of the job we are always reading and checking and learning stuff. And every time you go for the simulator every 6 months, the standard gets a little bit higher and they expect you to know more, to have read a little bit more. Sorry, I'm getting off topic. But yeah, so it's usually a little bit more in the summer. So usually about 35 to 40 hours a week in the summer. And that's flying and work. So maybe the flying is around 20 to 30 hours a week, and in the winter it's usually a little bit less. And over the whole year, I would say I average between 600 to 7 hours a year, but it depends on your base. So in Gatwick, I would do closer to 700, 750 a year. Whereas in Berlin, it's maybe closer to 600 a year. It depends on the route. It depends on the different routes you get rostered. If you swap with colleagues, if you prefer the long or short flights, or for example, doing a flight out and back, or if you prefer doing a shorter flight out and back and somewhere else out and back in one day. So when it's just out and back, we say that's 2 sectors. And when it's out and back twice, that's 4 sectors. So tends to be 2 or 4 sectors. 3 is when you do a night stop, of course. But the work is completely varied. Sometimes we get early, sometimes we get late. But I love it. I do it because I love it. I do it because it's really safe. It's, you know, it's the airline I work for is very safe. The training is excellent. It's phenomenal. I'm really, really happy to work there, and I really feel like I have a fantastic life. And I feel like all of the work that I did before as cabin crew and med ops in operations, flying cargo, I'm super happy. So one of the things is I had a head surgery this year. I'm not flying at the moment. I haven't been since January. Does that hold me back from achieving my dreams? No, actually, it just changes and realigns the goals. I realized that I won't achieve my command this year, so I have to have a new goal, which is to see as much of the world as I can, and that's what I'm doing. But I hope to get back to flying, and I hope to become a captain. So.
You will do, you will do. Let's just take one last questions here. I know that you mentioned briefly in your presentation, but are there any particular qualifications that you need to have before you set off on the path to become a pilot?
5 GCSEs A to C, or 9 to 7, I think it is now. And your flying qualifications, that's it. You don't need to have any special qualifications. Of course, any flight training. So if you're going to do flight training, any flight training at all, buy yourself a logbook. I have it's for 16 plus only, but I do have in my pilot training mentoring group a guide on how you can buy a logbook for like £7. Make sure you log every single hour. This is what counts. Get as much volunteering experience as you can. Work with, you know, brownie guides, with elderly people, with visually sighted people, with animals, with homeless, in a charity shop, whatever you want. Get as much experience as you can, get as much experience in the aviation industry as you can, and get the best qualifications you can. And it doesn't matter if you want to work in air traffic control, if you're a gamer and you want to, you know, sit in that tower with the fantastic views, and you're the kind of person who can sit on a computer for hours, or if you want to be in the aircraft, or if you want to be dispatched on the ground or designing airports. It doesn't matter what you want to do, get the best qualifications you possibly can, and that's going to put you in the best position to be able to pursue your career and whatever you want to do.
That's really good advice to end on there. So thank you very much, and thank you everyone for joining us today. A special thank you to you, Steph. We hope you are inspired to explore a career in aviation with so many diverse and exciting roles to discover, as Steph just mentioned. And of course, we hope you enjoy the rest of World Space Week. We'll look forward to seeing you again. Thank you. Goodbye.
Bye.